how upset was Uncle Phil last night?
Well, he did something I've never seen him do in all the years I've been here.
What, a sit-up?
The perfect family America fell in love with was hiding a painful secret. For 3 decades, fans of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air saw laughter, love, and life lessons inside a grand Bel-Air mansion. But behind the scenes, a story of hidden struggles, a devastating feud, and personal heartbreak was unfolding. The cast finally revealed the truth, a story of pain and healing that most fans never figured out. The Prince's desperate gamble. The story of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air does not begin with a brilliant idea for a television show. It begins with a young man about to lose everything. Before he was a global movie star, Will Smith was the Grammy-winning rapper known as the Fresh Prince. He and his partner DJ Jazzy Jeff had found incredible success with hits like Parents Just Don't Understand. Money came in fast, and Smith spent it just as quickly on cars, motorcycles, and designer clothes. In his excitement, he forgot to do one very important thing. For 2 years, from 1988 to 1989, he did not pay his income taxes. He later explained his thinking was that the IRS gets money from everyone, so they did not need his. The Internal Revenue Service felt differently. They assessed a tax debt of $2.8 million against him, took many of his possessions, and began to garnish his income. He was, in his own words, broke. He had to sell everything he owned in his hometown of Philadelphia. His career as a rapper was also losing steam at that point. Facing financial ruin, he was pushed by his girlfriend at the time to go to a party. That party was at the home of music and television producer Benny Medina, who would later manage Jennifer Lopez. Medina pitched Smith an idea for a show based on his own life story of growing up in a tough neighborhood before moving to live with a wealthy family in Beverly Hills. At that same party was the legendary producer Quincy Jones. Jones loved the idea and decided to hold an audition for the starring role right then and there, in his living room. Smith had never acted before and had no time to prepare. Surrounded by powerful television executives, he was pushed into performing on the spot. He got the part, and the network built the sitcom around him. This show was not just a career change for Smith, it was an act of desperation, his only way out of a massive financial hole. For the first 3 seasons of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the IRS took 70% of his salary to pay off his debt. The pressure was immense. The young actor was so new to the craft that during early episodes, he could be seen mouthing the other actors' lines as he tried to remember the entire script. His entire future was riding on the success of this one show. Secrets of the Banks living room. With Will Smith's future on the line, the Banks family came together on screen, creating a home that millions of people would come to love. But even inside this picture-perfect television family, secrets were hiding in plain sight. The story of the show's creation is filled with moments that fans never knew about, moments that shaped the series into a cultural icon. The heart of the family was Uncle Phil, played by James Avery. From the very first day, Avery embodied the powerful, no-nonsense father figure. When he first met Will Smith at the audition, Smith was sitting with his feet on a table and his hat on sideways. Avery, who was a complete stranger to Smith at the time, walked up to him and told him to put his feet down and turn his hat around. Smith complied, and Avery got the part. From that moment on, he was Uncle Phil. Smith described him as a 6'4" Shakespearean beast and admitted he spent the whole show desperately wanting Avery to think he was a good actor. Then there was Carlton Banks, Will's preppy and lovable cousin. His signature dance to the Tom Jones song, "It's Not Unusual," became one of the most famous moves of the 1990s. But that dance was not created by the writers. The script for one episode simply said, "Carlton dances." The actor who played him, Alfonso Ribeiro, had to make it up on the spot during a rehearsal. His inspiration came from what he considered the 2 corniest dances on the planet. He combined the dance Courtney Cox did in the Bruce Springsteen video for Dancing in the Dark, with Eddie Murphy's white man dance from his comedy special Delirious. Ribeiro never intended for the dance to be funny or iconic. It was just something he thought a character like Carlton would do. He had no idea what he had just created, but now he says he can never walk down the street without someone yelling at him to do the dance. Beyond the dance moves, the cast fought to make sure the show was authentic. They were given time to work together and give input on their characters, suggesting changes to ensure the series dealt with prominent black issues and stayed true to black culture. Karen Parsons, the actress who played the materialistic daughter Hillary, once had to talk the writers out of a storyline. They wanted to turn Hillary into a generic strong black woman trope, which was becoming common on television. Parsons argued that Hillary's flaws and her materialistic nature were what made the character real and relatable. She managed to convince them to keep the character as she was. This dedication from the cast helped the show represent what they called black excellence, not just in its success, but in the way the family loved each other. The first crack in the perfect family. On the surface, everything was going perfectly. The show was a massive hit, and the cast had formed a bond that felt like a real family. But behind the smiles and the laughter, one member of that family was silently falling apart, and the pressure would soon cause a crack that would break the family in two. Janet Hubert played the original Vivian Banks, the strong, intelligent, and graceful center of the family. For the first 3 seasons, her portrayal of Aunt Viv was a cornerstone of the show, a powerful matriarch who was both a loving mother and a respected college professor. But during the show's 3rd season, something changed. The cast and crew noticed that Hubert was no longer the happy, joking person they knew. What no one on set knew was that Hubert was trapped in what she later described as a very abusive marriage. Her home life was not good at all, and the stress was overwhelming. On top of this secret turmoil, she became pregnant during the 3rd season. She came to work every day, carrying this heavy burden alone. She later explained that she was no longer laughing or smiling on set because of the things that were going on in her life that nobody knew about. A young Will Smith, who was only 21 years old at the time, did not understand what was happening. He was the star of the show, carrying the immense pressure of its success on his shoulders. He saw Hubert's unhappiness not as a sign of a person in pain, but as a problem on set that was affecting the show's positive atmosphere. He later admitted that during that time, he was not sensitive and not perceptive to what she was going through. The joy that fans saw in Aunt Viv was disappearing behind the scenes. The perfect television family was starting to crack, and no one understood the real reason why. The 27-year feud that shattered a career, Janet Hubert's silent struggle, and the friction it created with a young Will Smith set the stage for one of the most painful and long-lasting feuds in television history. It was a conflict born from a misunderstanding that would ultimately shatter a career and leave deep scars that took nearly 3 decades to heal. When the 3rd season wrapped, the network approached Hubert with a new contract offer. It was a terrible deal. They wanted to cut her salary and limit her work to just 2 months and 2 weeks for the next season. The contract also forbade her from working on any other projects during the rest of the year. At the time, Hubert had a new baby to care for and an unemployed husband. She could not afford to accept such a restrictive offer. She said no, believing the network would come back with a better deal. They never did. For years, the public story was that Hubert was fired for being difficult. The reality was that she was trapped in an impossible situation and had to walk away. But the narrative that spread was a different one, fueled by comments Will Smith made in the media at the time. He was young and, by his own admission, driven by fear, viewing everything as a threat to the show that had saved him from financial ruin. His words painted Hubert as unprofessional and difficult to work with. For a black actress in Hollywood, those words were what Hubert called the kiss of death. The label stuck, and her career was destroyed overnight. She later told Smith directly about the damage his words had caused. She said she lost everything, her reputation, her career, everything. Hollywood disowned her. She said even her own family disowned her, telling her she had ruined their name. She felt banished and believed that Smith was the one who had banished her. For 27 years, she lived with the pain of this public fallout, all because of a misunderstanding and words spoken by a young star who did not know the full story of what she was going through. The Tale of Two Aunt Vivs. With Janet Hubert gone, the show was left with a huge hole to fill. The producers needed to find a new Aunt Viv, and they turned to an actress named Daphne Maxwell Reid. But what most people never knew was that this was not the first time Reid had been considered for the part. Here is a secret that remained hidden for years. Back in 1989, before the show had even started filming, Daphne Maxwell Reid was asked to audition for the role of Vivian Banks. She turned it down. Her reason was simple. She said at the time that she was not interested in doing a sitcom with a rapper who was not an actor. After she saw The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on television that fall, she realized it was a cute show and that she had missed a great opportunity. So, when the role opened up again 3 years later after Hubert's departure, Reid said she got there as fast as she could to audition. She competed against hundreds of other women and felt a special chemistry with James Avery, which she believes helped her get the job. When Reid took over the role, however, the character of Aunt Viv changed completely. The change was so significant that it altered the dynamic of the Banks family. Janet Hubert's version of Viv was a strong, outspoken college professor with a PhD who had her own career and ambitions. She was a talented dancer and a powerful voice in the family, a true partner to Uncle Phil in every way. The new Aunt Viv, played by Reid, was written as a much quieter and more traditional character. The writers pushed her into the background of most storylines. She quit her job as a professor and became a stay-at-home mom to the new baby, Nikki. The fiery, ambitious, and career-driven woman who had been a role model for so many viewers was gone. The character lost much of the personality that had made her so beloved in the first 3 seasons. The change was so drastic that it felt like an entirely different person had moved into the Banks mansion, not just a different actress. The on-screen family had been altered forever by the off-screen drama. The reunion. For 27 long years, the hurt between Will Smith and Janet Hubert remained. The feud was public and the pain was real. Then, in 2020, for the show's 30th anniversary reunion special on HBO Max, Smith knew he could not celebrate the show's legacy without addressing the past. He reached out to Hubert, and for the first time in almost 3 decades, they sat down to talk. The conversation was emotional and tearful. It was a moment of raw honesty where years of pain were finally brought into the light. Hubert told Smith everything she had gone through after leaving the show. She explained how his words had killed her career and how she had lost everything, feeling completely banished by Hollywood and even her own family. Smith listened. Now a father of 3 and a man who had been through his own public and private struggles, he finally understood the depth of her pain. He admitted that at 21 years old, he had been driven by fear and was not sensitive or perceptive enough to see her struggle. He looked at her and apologized, telling her that he wanted to be someone who protects her, not someone who unleashes dogs on her. He ended by saying, "You're still my Aunt Viv." In that moment, Hubert accepted his apology. She also apologized for having blasted him in the media over the years. It was a powerful moment of healing that was decades in the making. Later in the special, Hubert joined the rest of the cast on the original living room set. It marked the first time that she and Daphne Maxwell Reid, the 2 women who played Aunt Viv, had ever met. They shared a hug, a moment that brought the painful story full circle. Since that reunion, Smith and Hubert have stayed in touch. They now text each other back and forth, finally building the friendship and understanding they were never able to have all those years ago. Life Beyond the Mansion. After the final episode of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air aired in 1996, the cast members went their separate ways. Their lives after the show were often just as surprising and inspiring as the secrets from behind the scenes. They each carved out new paths, many of which defied the public perception of the characters they played. Karen Parsons, who famously portrayed the spoiled and materialistic Hillary Banks, did something completely unexpected. She founded an organization called Sweet Blackberry. This award-winning company creates animated films and books for children that tell the stories of unsung black heroes in history. The films have featured narration from stars like Queen Latifah and Chris Rock and have been shown on HBO and Netflix. The woman who played a character obsessed with shopping and status is now a celebrated author and educator, dedicated to sharing important pieces of black history with a new generation. Tatiana Ali, who grew up on the show as the sweet younger sister Ashley Banks, proved she was just as smart and driven in real life. While continuing her acting and music career, she attended and graduated from Harvard University. Her debut music album, Kiss the Sky, was certified gold, and she has continued to act in dozens of television shows and movies over the years. Today, she is a wife and a mother of 2 sons. Joseph Marcel, who played Geoffrey, the witty and proper British butler, is actually a highly respected classical actor. He is a member of the prestigious Royal Shakespeare Company and has spent years performing in productions of Shakespeare's plays on stages all over the world. He has even taken on the iconic role of King Lear. The man, known for his hilarious one-liners as a butler, has a deep and serious career in classical theater. The show was also famous for its many guest stars who went on to have huge careers. Supermodel Tyra Banks played Will's girlfriend from Philly, Jackie Ames. She later recalled feeling so dumb at her audition because she showed up in basketball shorts and a t-shirt, while all the other actresses wore little black dresses. She thought she had made a huge mistake, but her natural and casual approach was exactly what the casting directors were looking for, and she got the part. Queen Latifah appeared on the show twice. In one episode, she played Hillary's boss, and in another, she played a girl Will was afraid to ask on a date because he worried his friends would make fun of her for being overweight. And a young Don Cheadle, who would later become an Oscar-nominated actor, appeared in one episode as Will's old friend from Philly Ice Tray. The producers were so impressed with his performance that they shot a pilot for a spin-off show centered on his character. Cheadle even wrote the theme song for it, but the show was never picked up by the network. And of course, there is DJ Jazzy Jeff, whose real name is Jeffrey Towns. He and Will Smith were a famous rap duo and best friends long before the show even existed, having met at a house party in 1985. After his time playing jazz on the show, he continued his legendary music career as a DJ and producer, helping to develop the careers of major artists like Jill Scott and The Roots. Through all the years of fame and change, he and Will Smith have remained best friends. The story of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is much more than just a sitcom. It is a real-life story about the immense pressures of fame, the deep pain of misunderstanding, and the incredible power of forgiveness. The perfect family that welcomed us into their home every week was made up of real, flawed people. They struggled, they fought, and they carried secrets, but in the end, they found their way back to each other. What most fans never figured out was that the show's most powerful lessons were not in the script. They were in the true story that took 30 years to finally be told.